let us sit together in meditation for just a few minutes. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. My friends, there are many suttas in the Sutta Pitaka, which are expositions that give the detailed meaning of the teachings of the Buddha. The sutta that I'm talking about today is not like that. This sutta is all about the stories. The main doctrines are Dhamma teachings that are given are mostly just put in a list form, but they gain the force and urgency and inspiration because the surrounding stories are so poignant. For example, just at the end of the last hour, I read the statement and the verse about the Four Noble Truths, and the Buddha put it in the context of the immense weariness of going around and around on the cycle of rebirth, and the power of the realization of these truths in destroying craving and bringing about the condition where there is no more rebirth. So from the context of seeing what this teaching is good for, then it becomes something which is arousing, inspiring, giving us spiritual urgency. The same way, at the very beginning, on the previous hour, I was speaking about the 7 factors or 7 elements of practicing for communal harmony, which had their strong urgency in light of the story of King Ajatasattu and his intention to wage war. And then this sense that the Sangha could also be in danger, just the same way that the Vajjian people were in danger. I didn't tell you in the last hour what's in the commentary that would have been known to the listeners. At the time, it seemed like the Buddha was just simply advising Vasakara that it's too difficult to conquer them because they have these wonderful qualities and practices. So you might consider not waging war, or you might, this is sort of an inference. You could say that perhaps the Buddha was suggesting that the country of Magadha should also try to develop these wonderful qualities that would make them strong and safe. In the commentary, we see that the ambassador or the diplomat Vasakara completely took this teaching by the wrong end. He got the wrong end of the snake. He decided to go to the Vajji country as a spy and to surreptitiously spread malicious rumors, backbiting, and division among the Vajjian people. And he did this over a long period of time until gradually the Vajjian people lost their good qualities and became internally divided among themselves. And with that, they could be defeated. So then this was what the story tells us is the danger for the Sangha. Even if the Sangha is united and strong and powerful and numerous with high attainments during the lifetime of the Buddha, if we don't do the work to keep these good qualities going, then we would have the danger of falling into division and losing the good qualities. I thought of briefly mentioning one more teaching that's related to virtue and this connection, which is repeated again and again in this sutta as a kind of a refrain that says that meditative absorption is fruitful when it's imbued with virtue. And then wisdom is fruitful when it's imbued with meditative absorption. There's a sermon that was given in Nadika. We don't really know where this place is, but he was going from town to town. And at Nadika, the Buddha was questioned and pointed out many different groups of monastic and lay followers who had passed away. And the question was always put, well, what was their attainment? What was their destination? And the Buddha described them in terms of their noble attainments, in terms of what fetters they had eradicated or what fetters had been weakened or what their rebirth would be. Hundreds and hundreds of different categories of people, laymen, lay women, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, who'd had these kinds of realizations. And finally the Buddha says, well, it's tiresome to just go on with telling you the results for all these different people. Let me give you the mirror of the teaching. He said, if one gains experiential confidence in the Buddha, and then repeating the phrase, iti bisa bhagava araham samma sambuddho, such indeed is the Buddha, noble, worthy, fully enlightened, like that. If one gains experiential confidence in the Dhamma, which is well taught by the Buddha, onward leading, and he gives the standard phrase that is well known to every Buddhist. If one gains experiential confidence in the Sangha, while practicing upright and so forth, and together with that confidence, or that saddha, if the noble disciple's ethical conduct is lovable by the noble ones, unbroken, impeccable, spotless, and unmarred, liberating, praised by sensible people, and not mistaken, not in wrong view, but having right view, this kind of ethical conduct leads to the meditative absorption. So in this case, he's giving the demonstration of so many people from all different walks of life who have gained the results, who have gained the fruit. So this is kind of like an evidence for a faith, evidence by hearsay, and then explaining that one can gain the same confidence through one's own experience. Everybody in the Buddhist country can chant iti bisa bhagava araham samma sambuddho, Vinja Charana Sampanno Sabatola Kavidu Anuttaro Purisanam Masarati Sapta Deva Manusanam Buddha Bhagavan. Even small children know this. I haven't visited all the Buddhist countries, but in the country of Sri Lanka, I didn't meet any Buddhist of any age who did not know these descriptions of the qualities of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha by heart. And we hear them many times a day. So then these ideas become more and more engraved on the heart. And if it's combined and enlivened with this beautiful and impeccable virtuous conduct, those two together lead to success with meditation. See how motivating it is when we put it in the context. The Buddha taught, well, he gave Ananda a teaching which included the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Now, clearly, Bhante Ananda, who was the Buddha's personal secretary, who had memorized by heart all of the Buddha's teaching, he didn't need to have an explanation about the 4 Noble Truths, but look at the urgency and the powerful meaning that comes from the context. This is related to the Buddha's final illness. He fell ill, extremely ill during the Vasa. He spent 1 entire year traveling before his final parinibbana. So while he was resting during the time of the Vasa, he had an illness and realized that it was not yet quite time for him to pass away because he had teachings to give. And so using his powers, he made his body recover from that illness and came out. And he made the statement that even a person who has developed the 5 spiritual powers, if they were so requested, would be able to extend their lifespan and live for an entire eon or the remainder of an eon. This was an obvious hint for Ananda to ask him to please extend his life, but Ananda was in some kind of a stupor or some kind of a frozen state and didn't pick up on the hint. And so then a second time and a third time, the Buddha repeated his statement that if one who has fully mastered the spiritual powers would be asked to do so, then he would be able to extend his life. But Ananda never asked. And then later on, when Ananda realized his mistake, he was so mortified and horrified, and he begged the Buddha to please extend his life. And the Buddha said, no, I've already relinquished my lifespan because you didn't ask. And it's your fault, Ananda, that you didn't pick up my obvious hints. What a blow. So then, this is sometime after the Buddha has recovered from his sickness. He comes out of his dwelling. He sits in the shade of the porch. And Ananda comes to the Buddha, bows down to one side, and says to him, "Sir, it's fantastic that the Buddha is comfortable and well, because when the Buddha was sick, my body felt like it was drugged. I was disoriented, and the teachings weren't clear to me. Still, at least I was consoled by the thought that the Buddha won't become fully extinguished, won't reach his full parinibbana, without making some statement regarding the Sangha of mendicants." And the Buddha replied, "What could the mendicant Sangha expect from me, Ananda? I've taught the Dhamma without making any distinction between secret and public teachings. The realized one doesn't have the closed fist of a teacher when it comes to teaching. If there's anyone who thinks, I'll take charge of the Sangha of mendicants, or the Sangha of mendicants is meant for me, let them make a statement regarding the Sangha. But the realized one doesn't think like this. So why should he make some statement regarding the Sangha?" This would be a statement regarding who is going to be appointed as the leader of the Sangha following the Buddha's death. The Buddha continued, "Now I'm old, elderly, and senior. I'm advanced in years and have reached the final stage of life. I'm currently 80 years old. Just as a decrepit cart keeps going by relying on straps, in the same way the realized one's body keeps going by relying on straps, or so you'd think. Sometimes the realized one, not focusing on any signs, and with the cessation of certain feelings, enters and remains in the signless immersion of the heart. Only then does the realized one's body become more comfortable. So, Ananda, be your own island, your own refuge, with no other refuge. Let the teaching be your island and your refuge, with no refuge." And how does a mendicant do this? It's when a mendicant meditates by observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of feeling, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of mind, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. They meditate observing an aspect of the principles of Dhamma, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. That's how a mendicant is their own island, their own refuge, with no other refuge. That's how the teaching is their island and their refuge, with no other refuge. Whether now or after I have passed, any who shall live as their own island, their own refuge, with no other refuge, with the teaching as their island and their refuge, with no other refuge. Those mendicants of mine who want to train shall be among the best of the best. So friends, did you have any doubt that the Four Foundations of Mindfulness is an important teaching? Do you have any doubt that this is the essential teaching that every practitioner must develop if they want to reach the goal? And after hearing the Buddha's words to Ananda, you couldn't possibly have any doubt about it. In this way, we see, even though in this teaching, he doesn't explain the full meaning of the four foundations of mindfulness. Instead, one would have to go to some other teaching, like the mindfulness of the body, the mindfulness of breath, or the mindfulness of the four foundations of mindfulness, and hear that sutta teaching, or read that sutta teaching, listen to it, or read it again and again, memorize it, reflect on the meaning of the teaching with all those details. Four Foundations of Mindfulness is maybe 12 pages or so of concentrated text, and every paragraph is very deep with a lot that can be practiced. So one could spend 7 days or 7 years trying to really develop all the things that are there in the four foundations of mindfulness. And then finally, having listened or read, having reflected and memorized, having investigated within oneself to see directly within one's own experience whether these Dhammas, these practices given in that teaching are true or not true, then you would develop it. You might find that through the four foundations that one is able to come close to samadhi, to full concentration, and be able to see the arising and disappearing of phenomena, see the arising of phenomena, see the ending of phenomena, see the arising of phenomena and disappearing together, completely see, really understand impermanence, really realize non-self secondary to seeing impermanence, and with that come to this stage of seeing reality how it really is, which is the condition for the dropping away of some of the big formations, some of the big fetters of desire and reactivity can drop away as a result of that. And if we know that, then we can come to wisdom, come to experiencing the end of dukkha and knowing that we experience the end of dukkha. So I believe that this context, just considering it in terms of how Ananda must have been in such an anxious state with so much fear and remorse about what would happen after the Buddha's death, and remorse about not realizing what he could have done to make the Buddha live longer, and how comforting and how reviving that is. I want to give you another teaching to Ananda. This is coming forward a bit. The Buddha has spoken to several different individuals and given several different teachings. And he's had his last meal. He's had his last alms round. And finally, he's resting beneath the sal trees and a few last remaining people have come to see the Buddha. The deities come to see the Buddha, and the deities are very concerned. Some of them wailing and distressed because of the Buddha's coming death. The monks who have realized their full awakening are calm and sitting in meditation. Ananda has obtained stream entry, but he has not obtained his full awakening yet. And Ananda is weeping in anguish. The Buddha consoles Ananda. He says, "Enough, do not grieve, do not lament. Did I not prepare for this when I explained that we must be parted and separated from all we hold dear and beloved? How could it possibly be so that what is born, created, conditioned, and liable to fall apart should not fall apart, even the realized one's body? For a long time, Ananda, you've treated the realized one with deeds of body, speech, and mind that are loving, beneficial, pleasant, wholehearted, and limitless. You have done good deeds, Ananda. Devote yourself to meditation, and you will soon be free of defilements." Then the Buddha spoke to the mendicants, the other monks, and he praised Ananda. This is very important because Ananda gets a lot of criticism. But the Buddha praised Ananda. He said, the Buddhas of the past or the future have attendants who are no better than Ananda is for me. Ananda is astute, he is intelligent, he knows the time for monks, nuns, laymen, laywomen, kings, ministers, religious founders, and the disciples of religious founders to visit the realized one. There are these 4 incredible and amazing things about Ananda. What 4? If an assembly of monks goes to see Ananda, they're uplifted by seeing him and uplifted by hearing him speak. And when he falls silent, they've never had enough. And the same thing, an assembly of nuns, an assembly of laymen, an assembly of laywomen going to see Ananda. They're uplifted, seeing him, uplifted by hearing him speak. When he falls silent, they've never had enough. These are the 4 incredible and amazing things about Ananda. And then he compares Ananda to a wheel-turning monarch who also brings joy to the people. And wherever he goes, the people want to see him, and they feel uplifted to see him and hear him speak. So the Dhamma in this is one of the expressions of impermanence. All things dear and delightful will change and be separated from me. That's one of the contemplations that many Buddhists do on a regular basis, possibly even on a daily basis. It may be part of the daily chanting or reflections. There's 5 reflections for lay people, or 5 reflections for everybody. And the body has the nature to become ill. The body has the nature to become old. The body has the nature to die. All things dear and delightful will change and be separated. And all beings, the last reflection is, all beings are the owners of their karma, born of their karma, abide supported by their karma. whatever karma they shall do, whether for good or for ill. Of that karma, they will be the heir. And so we hear these teachings in many contexts, and in our own life experience, we may have had the occasions, for example, in facing the loss of a loved one, when that reflection about all things dear and delightful, changing and vanishing, became so powerful, so effective, and so redeeming that enables us to recover from that trauma of that loss, enables us to stabilize the mind, enables us ultimately to live in a world which is continuously falling apart, where the losses are continuous one after another, and yet to retain that inner tranquility and that inner stability. But if you have not yet experienced a great loss yourself, or not yet realized that the benefit of that particular Dhamma teaching about impermanence, then when you hear the story about Ananda and the great distress and upset that Ananda experienced in this framework of the story of his loving lifetime service to the Buddha, then the story will help you to open your heart and to take that teaching on board and to realize the meaning. There are several other teachings that I'm not going to develop or speak extensively about. And it might be even that this sutta is not necessarily the best presentation of every single one of these teachings. For example, at the beginning of this discussion, I started with the 7 things for communal harmony, and then I gave you 7 more things for being harmonious while you're still in society. Then it appears that as this sutta was remembered, there's another list of 7 and another list of 7 and then a list of 6, and it's almost as if the compilers of the sutta were trying to make it more wonderful by piling in more different piles of 7s. And the reason we can think that is when we compare the different versions. The Chinese version of this sutta, which was translated into Chinese from Sanskrit, from the Sarvastivadin school of Buddhism, has the first set, but it doesn't have the same subsequent sets. And so because there's variation, then we think these other ideas may have been added in later on. The Buddha additionally taught 7 faculties, which is sort of like the 5 faculties. The 5 faculties are faith, or confidence, energy, mindfulness, meditative absorption, and wisdom. And we think of those 5 faculties in terms of balancing, like faith is balancing with wisdom. If you have a lot of wisdom, you perhaps don't need so much faith. But if you don't have so much wisdom, if you have a lot of faith, that will take you. If you have a lot of concentration, you don't want to have the arousal of too much energy, You want just enough energy, but if you don't have concentration, you need to exert energy. And then the sati in the middle of these 5 is the balancing factor. We don't get this from this sutta. We get this from elsewhere. But in this case, the compilers wanted a list of 7. And so they gave a list of 7 that's sort of the same as the list of 5. It's they gave faith, sada, then they gave hiri and otapa, which is hiri means conscience, being conscientious about right and wrong. You know the difference between right and wrong, and you don't want to do what's wrong. And then otapa is could be translated as prudence, that you would think ahead and be aware of what the consequences and results of your decisions are, and consider whether the decision is going to be skillful or not skillful. So those are kind of like imported in. And then learned Bahusutta is having heard a lot of suttas. Then it comes to energetic, that's the same thing as virya, the same as in the 5. And then mindful, but in this case, mindful is given upati sati. So this is the mindfulness of the meditation practice of the 4 foundations of mindfulness and wise. So it's a slightly different list, but kind of sort of similar. Then the following 7 is the 7 bojjhangas, which is a really important list. It's very wonderful list to develop and reflect about and learn, and kind of like make it personal. Get your own idea about how this works. The wonderful thing with the 7 factors of awakening is that this is a set that's kind of like onward leading. So if you develop one factor, that supports the next one, and the next one supports the next one. It's a little bit same as the spiral path of dependent origination, where one factor leads to another. So there's a lot of different ways to understand it. I'll give one. If you practice mindfulness and you're observing how things are, you might notice that all things are impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without self, because just by observing them mindfully. And then you would realize, oh, the Blessed One was right, and become very interested in investigating the Dhamma. So this is the second factor, is called Dhamma Vichaya, which is the investigation of the principles of the Dhamma. And when you begin to investigate the principles of the Dhamma and experiencing the benefit of that, that naturally brings about an arising of energy or virya, and then applying energy to the practice leads to the initial success in meditation, accompanied by rapture. That's the piti. So there's the factor of piti coming about, or you could say, when you're applying energy to dispelling the hindrances, and when you get, because of your energy, you have some success with that, and then the rapture arises, and then this rapture is like could be translated. Sometimes it's like waves of joy. Almost the energy is so strong you feel like you're bouncing out of your body, but then it settles into something more like a joyful interest, like looking at the object of meditation and what the practice is, and it's so easy to be really connected with the meditation because of having this joyful interest. And with that connection to the object of meditation or to the method of meditation that you're on, then it settles into tranquility of the body and mind. This is a deeper level of meditative absorption where the distractions of the mind running around or the distractions of bodily pain, bodily restlessness drops away, and the mind and body and heart becomes progressively more settled and more still. And then with that comes samadhi, that's the full immersion into meditation absorption. And with that full immersion, the rapture and happiness and pleasure of meditation becomes less important because those things are almost like a distraction. You don't want them anymore, and then so level by level those things be dropped away, and neutral feeling becomes more predominant, and the neutral feeling allows the mental quality of equanimity to be much more easily seen and realized. And so that's one of the ways. There's many ways to look at this. It's a great teaching, wonderful to develop. I spoke at the very beginning in the guided meditation about 7 perceptions. This is very similar to the Girimananda Sutta, except the Girimananda Sutta is in the Book of Tens, and it has 10 perceptions. But here in this sutta, the compilers wanted 7 because they were doing sets of 7. But this is also a very beautiful and profound sutta, very loved as one of the suttas that it's almost like taking a meditation retreat to reflect and develop the ideas that are expounded and explained in that sutta. And then the last of all that I would say among the sets that are described here, that I already mentioned the Four Noble Truths. I also already mentioned the factors of awakening. The Buddha does mention the Bodhipakas, the 7 sets are the wings to awakening, which is another kind of a compilation of the basic teachings of the Buddha in a list format for the sake of remembering them. So, in conclusion, I'm having the idea that the Buddha is sending us out into the world. We're going there without him. And he wants us to have all the things we need in our backpack. And so through this year of teaching, he's giving multiple lists of teachings that should be developed, which are essential, that are core, that are the basic foundations, and they're being given in a way with a lot of uplift, inspiration, urgency to make them meaningful. It's like the Buddha has whatever authority the Buddha has, because of his attainments, his accomplishments, his skill in teaching, his 80 years of, 80 years of life, 45 years of wandering across India, teaching here, teaching there, constantly teaching, constantly looking out for people and using skillful means to find the right teaching that will be effective for different individuals and different groups. So with all of his authority and all of his power, he's giving this transmission of the Dhamma to his disciples, and through the disciples, transmitting the Dhamma for us. This will be our inheritance, for which we can be grateful and inspired. So these are my thoughts about a brief discussion about some of the treasures in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. And if I'll take a few minutes in case anybody has questions or comments that they would like to add. And I'm changing my video so that I can see you all. If you would like to comment on any questions about what I said, or if you have found for yourself that this sutta is meaningful and helpful to you, I would like to hear how you have been inspired by the teachings of the Buddha's last days. Okay, Barbara?
No, Ayya. Is that just one sutta that we talked about?
One gigantic sutta.
That's what I was just going to say. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to say anymore, but at least you told me it was one gigantic, because I thought, am I missing something here? And yes, I am.
You know, on one occasion I was hiking the Appalachian Trail, and I asked Bhante Gunaratana, at that time I had a very small device, electronic device, for my reading materials. It's called a Palm Pilot. I don't know if you remember them from the old days.
Yeah.
And I would be able to put some text into my Palm Pilot. And so I asked Bhante which suttas I should take to read while I was hiking the trail. He did not say to take the Parinibbana Sutta. He just said, read all of them.
Right.
So he wasn't willing to make a choice. But in a certain way, I feel that if you only had one sutta to read, probably it would be the Satipatthana and the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, or the one on two kinds of thought, or the one on dealing with afflicted thoughts, or the one on the breath meditation. Those are more basic and more universal. But the Satipatthana is a pretty great sutta. If you only had one,
Okay.
maybe after you have studied the Dhamma a bit and learned a bit, if you have to go to a desert island or a cabin or go on a hike and you only can have one sutta, maybe this would be the one that you might take.
Thank you. And that's helpful. I realize how much knowledge and awareness that you embrace. And I'm real clear that I don't even have time for all that. So it's kind of, I'm not sure, I feel like my practice is evolving and I'm okay with that, but it's not going to be in that kind, it's not going to have too much of a knowledge base, more an awareness base. At least that's my understanding. If you have a comment on that, I'm interested.
I would recommend that you avoid evil, do good, and purify the mind.
Oh, that's succinct.
Yes.
And my last comment is, and I'm not actually being joking when I say that, is, you know, those books for dummies? Is there a Buddhist book for dummies? There are so many lists. It's kind of like, how do you even retain all the lists?
Yeah. I don't recommend Buddhism for Dummies.
You don't, okay. I do it the hard way.
Just just read suttas and enjoy them.
Okay.
Yeah. And read the stories and enjoy the stories.
I do. Thank you.
There's a question, can I expand on how the Buddha was able to extend his life and the lesson that Ananda missed while he was in a haze? Well,
What?
There are quite a few miracles given in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, and it would have been a miracle for the Buddha to have continued his life for an entire eon. Because elsewhere, the Buddha doesn't really respect miracles or, magical phenomenon. He discourages it, actually. So I feel that the story about him extending his life for an eon is more a fable. But then being ill, and they don't say how he made his illness stop so that he could go on for another 3 months and finish his work. But I do know that people who have very good mindfulness of the body are able to scan internally and to have a direct perception of what's going on with the different aspects of the body, both energetically and physically, and that there is a practice of practicing the Brahma Viharas towards the body and towards the disease in the body. So where you're like extending loving kindness, which includes wanting your body to become better and also giving loving kindness to the cancer or giving loving kindness to the disease. And so then, directing the mind with a thought of like a calming and balancing, and thereby making the energetic or the humors in the body to become calmed and balanced, and thereby to stop a disease process. What I've heard about modern people who practice in this way is that they have to continue their meditation. So they have a disease process, but it's just like in cessation because of their meditative practice. And it could be that then later on they become distracted and they give up practicing meditation, and then the disease comes back. So, but it's only in that case of extending his life for 3 months, it's only temporary. And, the Buddha says, because this body arose, it has the nature to pass away.
Right.
I hope that answers that. Ralph, we have a question.
Yes. First, thank you, Venerable One, for today's day of mindfulness. I much appreciate it, and I will go to the monastery's website for Dana for today. I guess my question, during the guided meditation, you talked about dispassion, and I'm just curious if there's specific trainings in that, because I am what some psychologists would call a highly sensitive person. I'm very easily excited. It's hard for me to calm down. I've tried training in equanimity. The wisdom, long periods of meditation do calm me down, but I'm pretty easily excited. And so I'm just curious, is there a specific sutta or specific trainings that you recommend related to dispassion?
Yes. There's a stock phrase that appears in many different teachings, or many different suttas. I don't know the best citation. One citation would be the exposition on the elements in the middle length discourses. And what it says is, as a result of doing the practices that lead you to get relief from the hindrances and enter into samadhi, then upon emerging from samadhi, you see things how they really are. And this creates the condition for what's called nibbida, which is sometimes translated as disenchantment or translated as revulsion. So when all of the reactivity, the aversion, the greed, and the compulsive habit of the mind of creating all the formations, can be like it's temporarily on hold during deep meditation, and then when you come out, those phenomena come back, and you feel just like disappointed with the whole thing. It's compared to a dog who's been given a bone, and he chews on the bone for a while, but eventually he realizes there's no more flavor or nutrition or benefit left in the bone, and then he just drops it and walks away. That's nibbida. So then when you become sick and tired of that reactive tendency, then comes viraga. So it's a natural thing. It's not done by force. It's not something that you're seeking, but it's something that is related to meditation and insight and becoming disenchanted or disappointed with the ordinary states of mind.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sharanya.
So I was just aware during the conversation about all this pain in my body as I was listening to the Dhamma talk today. So there was this pain in my chest when I thought about having to leave my child behind. There was this pit in my stomach when you were talking about the Buddha's last minutes. And so it was really interesting, I think, watching these sensations in the body. And at first I was like wanting to step away from it. And then I thought, well, that's not what I'm supposed to do. So let me pay attention to it. And that's probably the best thing I could have done, because as I paid attention to it, it also faded. So I think just being aware that irrespective of how I feel about it, the work needs to be done. And I kind of have to just see things for the way it is. So I just wanted to make that comment. I also wanted to ask you, when you talk about your teacher, Bhante Gunaratana, is he the one who also wrote the book, Mindfulness in Plain English?
Yes, that's the one.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted to share my comments. I didn't have a question today.
Well, yes, so if you can distinguish between, it's a very gentle process. There are some things that arise in our meditation and in our life where all we really should do is just with compassionate see what it is. And then it resolves itself. There are some things that can come up either once in a while or when we're triggered, or they could come up habitually, which actually are not helpful and for which we might make the decision to try to abandon or relinquish or not favor those kind of things. So like when you're in meditation, you would not want to intentionally use the meditation hour to mentally write out your shopping list. Because you would think just doing that during your meditation hour is creating such a habit that's going to be a real problem for you later. You're going to, like if you do it 3 times, then you'll get in the habit of using your meditation hour to make the shopping list. And it's really negative to the practice. And so you just don't do it. And so if the mind wants to do it, you say no, or you can just say, like, thank you for sharing, but we're not going to do that right now. And so then, but what you're describing, something came up and it was not really comfortable for you, but you just observed it. That was perfectly good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Here's another comment about the volume, and I'm very sorry. In a future talk, I will have to experiment with using a different technology and having a little microphone that I'm wearing instead of relying on the microphone that I'm using right now. I don't think I'm able to settle it today, but I appreciate the comment and I will try to do better in future. Barbara, I'm going to let you be the last commenter. So what would you like to say to inspire us and take us out? Unmute yourself.
This has been a really wonderful day, Ayya, and I really thank you. What is true is that it's early in the day was really hard for me. And that's what I just said to myself. This is hard. So my capacity to kind of take in the teaching was definitely more limited than other times. At the same time, I felt it was an invitation for growth. So I'm comfortable with that fact. But I just wasn't really aware that it was hard. And then I let go of that and just kind of tried to just flow with the day. And then I was fine. But I'm realizing that in some ways, if my awareness and knowledge increase, then it requires more of me. So I don't know how to soften that up, but I'm very glad for today. Yeah.
We are streaming these videos, these talks on our YouTube channel.
Okay.
I think if the time was not convenient for you,
Mm-hmm.
you could go to our YouTube channel at a different hour in the same day
Okay.
and listen, but you wouldn't be able to have the interactions.
Yeah. Okay.
So let us pay respects to the Triple Gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagavan Buddham Bhagavantan Ahivadi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Subhatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Thank you, everyone, for your patient listening.